Hi, I'm Krista Redpath, and you are listening to Around the Big Sky in Women's Hoops, a weekly podcast brought to you by Krista Redpath Media, where we break down the game, elevate the story, and champion the female voice.
All right, so let's start with the big game that was in Montana. First of all, how'd the TV call go?
The TV call was good.
Yeah, good.
Yes.
Fun seeing you down there. I haven't actually got a chance to watch it back because I was actually able to go to both the games this year. But glad you had that opportunity to do that once again. So let's take a look at what went down in the league. First of all, Montana got the 67-66 win. Montana State got the 67-66 win in Missoula over Montana. We broke that one down pretty heavily on Monday, a little bit yesterday as well. But Thursday's scores: Idaho wins in Greeley, 68-57. Northern Arizona gets it done at home against Eastern Washington, 75-63. Weber State beats Portland State, 62-48. And Sac State goes on the road, wins in Pocatello, 72-63 over Idaho State. Other Saturday scores outside of the rivalry game included Northern Arizona completely rolling it up on Idaho, 106-76. That's a stunning result. Not that Northern Arizona won on their home floor, but that they blew out Idaho by 30 points. Pretty crazy. And 106 points, that's crazy offense. Northern Colorado got back on the winning side, 66-57 over Eastern Washington. Idaho State, 66-52 over Portland State. The 1-point win for the Cats in Missoula. And then Weber State gets the weekend sweep with a 68-52 win over Sacramento State. We'll come back to some of these other results, but let's talk about the way that the game went down in Missoula on Saturday. I think that the narrative going in was, can the Lady Grizz even come close to hanging around? Montana State's so good. They had been so good leading up to this game. And the Lady Grizz did more than hang around. This was a great game. I thought this was one of the better games in the rivalry in the last handful of years or so. And Montana State showed great moxie to close out the win, but I thought the Lady Grizz also played awesome. And I think they deserve a ton of credit for the heart that they showed. What'd you think? What were some of the key factors you saw play out in the game?
Well, I looked at the first half and taking a look at that in more detail, I think that it was pretty evenly matched when I look at first and second quarter, kind of just back and forth. And what I was impressed with the Lady Grizz, really spread offensively. They used multiple weapons. You saw them go inside to Isabella Zangaro a couple times, which I thought was great to see that high-low action after they made a change in the starting lineup with Waddington getting the start and Matt Koenig back into the starting lineup. Went for a little bit more of a quicker lineup to start to kind of counter Lexi Deeden, Mara Dykstra, although Lexi's still coming back from the knee, and so her minutes are still pretty managed. But overall, I was pretty impressed with the first half of play, and the entire game actually was fun to watch. I think the difference maker for me, Esmeralda Morales for Montana State, just she has the game under control. And she went into the half, hadn't even shot a free throw. But 11 points in the second half just really solidified. She made good decisions down the stretch, a couple key turnovers for the Lady Grizz. But overall, I think that they had a lot of offense from multiple players.
It's so interesting because they say basketball is a game of runs, but in the first half, it actually really wasn't. Like, both teams just kind of matched baskets, and the Cats got like a little bit of a gap. They were up like 3, but then it was just go back and forth from 3 to 1, 3 to 1, 3 to 1. There was not very many runs. Then Montana State did go on a run in the third quarter, and I thought, though, Montana to not fold in that moment is what then helped bring it down the wire. I thought Dylan Phillips' play on the Montana State side of things helped extend the lead, and they pushed it all the way to 12. But I thought Danny Barch's play, especially down the stretch in that third quarter into the beginning of the fourth, was what kept him in it. Avery Waddington stole the headlines because she hit so many threes in the fourth quarter, and she deserves a bunch of credit. But I thought Barch, steadying the ship, she had those 2 putbacks that kept it under double digits. I thought that was the sort of the tie that binds that then got to the point where then Waddington could bring the Lady Grizz back. So just talk about that stretch for the Lady Grizz and how big Danny Barch was.
Well, Danny Barch was just all over the boards, too, with 16 rebounds. And the Lady Grizz did out-rebound the Bobcats. That didn't come into play at the very end of the game. But I do think that she really contributed to that surge on the offensive end to get them some points and get them feeling that momentum for sure.
And then Waddington, her coming out party. We've been very high on her already throughout the show. Around the Big Sky Women's Hoops, presented by Advanced Imaging. Krista Redpath in studio with me, Colter Nuanez. But she's been great for a freshman. On Saturday, she looked nothing like a freshman. She looked like one of the cold-blooded players in this game. I couldn't believe the confidence that she played with. Even Danny Barch was laughing in the post-game press conference. She's like the 1-3 that she just stepped into in transition. We were all like, whoa, the confidence, and then swish, nothing but net. I loved it. I thought that her performance and the way that she sort of just blossomed in front of what was a great crowd at Allberg Arena was a cool moment for her as a Lady Grizz.
Well, 21 points, 17 in the second half. And absolutely, when you brought that up, it just the poise she had down the stretch. But to be able to take the ball from coast to coast, to be able to get a rebound and have the court awareness to go down and hit that three, it gave me the chills because it was definitely something that we haven't seen, that athleticism. From a freshman like that in a while for the Lady Grizz. So just really exciting. And of course, the crowd was awesome in Dahlberg. I mean, I think there was just under 4,000 fans, but it was loud in there. And I know that led to some miscommunication with Montana State throughout the game, kind of because they weren't really, totally used to that noise.
Even with all of that, though, I mean, the Lady Grizz mitigated Montana State's pressure, 17 turnovers, which on a normal night is a little bit too many, but against the Bobcats, that's 8 less than what they were forcing per game. Mm-hmm. That was good. Waddington was great. The Lady Grizz, I thought, showed great heart and fight. All that said, and even with Montana State having some communication breakdowns, there still was never a moment where I thought that the Cats were going to lose. Even when they were down 2 with 90 seconds left, I still thought, like, this team is so cool, calm, and collected. They're going to find a way. And then they did. They scored the last 3 points of the game to get it. And they all talked about that in the postgame. Mara Dykstra, Esmeralda Morales, and Dylan Phillip, they all said, hey, that's what we know that we're going to have to do the second half of conference play, take everybody's best shot. And they said this is a great test for us, and we were able to get it done.
Well, and they've also had some other tests. I mean, Idaho played them to 3. Eastern Washington played them to 2. So I think the league is strong, and there's been other tests. But I think, to your point, Coulter, there's just too many weapons for this Montana State team. I mean, Mara Dykstra had 11 points in the game, but she came on offensively when they needed it. Dylan Phillip had a phenomenal game. I think KJ Martin, still call her Lamardo, I thought she had some really nice, only finished with 9 points, but I thought she made some nice plays down the stretch.
It's amazing how many great players that Montana State has. Like, you look at the end of that game, I thought Nate Harris's play on the out of bounds to throw the backside lob to Waddington was great. But even then, Ella Johnson, she's getting hardly any headlines compared to all these others because she's basically like the 3rd or 4th player off the bench. Taylor Chirick has been the one that's getting all the headlines as the bench player, but then you have all these veterans in the starting lineup. Johnson's the one that sort of had to take a back seat after starting a bunch as a freshman. But she plays great defense in that moment. It's just another weapon that Montana State has. I just can't believe how many great players they have on their team.
Well, and Sherrick, we didn't even talk about her. She had all of her 8 points in the first half. She was really critical coming off the bench. Like Coach Binford likes to bring her in for that high motor, just in your face, get up and down the court, relentless style of play. And she did just that in the first half, but she's a lot of fun to watch.
Oh, she's unbelievable to watch. For those that have not watched her, I think the most underrated element of athleticism, because we always talk about height, length, speed, musculature, all these different things. Physical conditioning. Her physical conditioning is crazy. Like, to be able to play the head of the full court press, usually if you are that person that's on the ball in the inbounder and then you're also the trapper, you're never having to intercept the point guard at half court. She's so athletic, she can do all 3. She can guard the ball, trap the ball, and then also beat the ball handler up the court and meet her at half court and then play a possession of on-ball defense. I've actually never seen anybody that can do that in women's basketball.
Well, and I also think it's a credit to Coach Binford with using her depth because she lets them know that, hey, when you're in there, you better give it your all because we do have a whole list of players that can come in here and give it 100%. I think that trap is really effective.
It is.
I do. And I think the Lady Grizz were, I thought they handled it quite well.
They did.
They had some timely turnovers, though, in the second half, fourth quarter, that just, you'd like to have those back. But for the most part, I thought they were very much poised and under control and didn't throw the ball away a ton. When you throw that 1-2-2 or 2-1-2 trap, 3/4 court, half court, full court, Coach Binford really has her players, just they have that knack for hands on the ball, but they also just fill those gaps. They really make it difficult for anyone to pass around.
Well, the last point on this game, and then we'll get to some of the other stuff that went on around the league, is that I thought that Nate Harris was awesome in this game, and his staff in general. I thought Lindsey Woolley and the rest of the crew really did a great job with this. Not just the pregame plan, but you never know how anybody's going to do or react. He's coached. He's been the interim coach for 10 days before this game played out. He coached in 3 games already. But it's not Cat Grizz. It's not 4,000 people at Dahlberg Arena. It's not going against your old boss who gave you your first D1 job. It's not going against the longest tenured head coach in the league who's, one of the great winners the league has ever seen in Tricia Binford. All that stuff can make somebody feel outside their comfort zone and not be able to handle the magnitude of the moment, at least for a minute. I thought Nate looked like he belonged from start to finish. I thought he had a great sideline presence. I thought his team was well prepared, well executed. I thought he kept them composed throughout. And I thought it was really cool to see. I didn't know how it was going to go, but I thought he matched wits with Trish all game long, and I thought that was really impressive from the Montana sideline.
Yeah, I think it's been a tough go for the Lady Grizz. Anytime you have to make a coaching change like this, and uncertainty, and he's brought a level of calmness, at least in this game, where the players looked really poised, and I would expect nothing less. So if you're on the staff and you have to step into that role, he's been doing this for a while now, and he knows that these games are a big deal. They're a big deal to our state, to all the players that contribute and play, and so overall, I think the Lady Grizz, came up a little short, and got to get to go down to Bozeman in a few more weeks and see if they can steal one down in the Brick.
We're on the Big Sky Women's Hoops, probably presented by Advanced Imaging. Northern Arizona, 106 points. I mean, that's a lot of points. And a lot of times when you see those, it's in a back and forth where both teams are scoring a bunch. They also clamped it down and won by 30. So what did you think of the offensive outburst by NAU?
Well, I watched part of the game, and I think that Coach Payne said it. I mean, she pretty much summed it up saying that's the absolute best we have played all year. And she's looking at the offensive side of the ball. So making 17 threes is nothing to sneeze at. But overall, I feel like they really utilized lots of different weapons. Audrey Taylor had a big game, which is kind of surprising. She's playing some minutes off the bench. Sophie Glancy continued to dominate. She's Player of the Week this week. She's just been a force underneath and pretty much all over the court. I think it was nice to see Nia Moran had a big game. Olivia Moran did. So, multiple shots. I think when you start feeling it, and anytime you can get that many threes and make them, you're going to be a really hard team to beat. And Idaho brings the defense. So for you to do that against a team like Idaho, they really must have just been feeling it.
No, I mean, 17 threes, but then also all the high rolling stuff that they do with Glancy. Mm-hmm. It makes their offense truly unstoppable, because if you run that high pick and roll action, then you rotate the ball around the perimeter, somebody's getting an open shot. And if not, Glancy's rolling right through the middle of the paint. I mean, she must have had 5 buckets where she didn't even dribble the ball. She's just rolling, she's getting it, and just right off the glass. Their offense is so beautiful to watch when they're running it efficiently.
So some perspective in that, NAU is 16-5 right now. Sophie Glancy has only had 2 games this season where she hasn't been in double figures. So Amazing. That should tell you right there what she does for the program. She's had 11 double-doubles this year. She has consistently showed up, and what that does is it just makes you such a better dimensional basketball team. When you have that inside presence and that agility, it allows your perimeter to open up. And that's exactly what they do. They're all about placement on the perimeter. They spread you out. They look to just have Sophie in that inside presence, but they definitely have some shooters that can knock it down.
The other thing that really stood out to me about the Big Sky scoreboard from this week was that Weber State got a pair of victories, and now they are 4-3. This team went 4-14 last year in conference play, so that is a huge step forward. I know Weber kind of took it on the chin last weekend when they came through Montana. Lady Grizz played really well to close out that game, and even though they were Weber was in the mix, and then the couple nights later, they got blown out in Bozeman. So then to get back on the horse and to get the weekend sweep, I think that's big time for Gentile Jackson's young team.
Oh, absolutely. And I think Emma Nopu had an incredible weekend. In fact, I was messaging with CT. Everyone knows Carla Taylor, Weber State. She said, you know what? She's like the baby Barkley of the league, which I love that. I mean, she had 15 rebounds and 16 points, and then another 15 rebounds and 17 points in both of those outings.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily love to throw out points on here. I mean, we go through a lot of players. We have a lot in the Big Sky that can score. But if you can do that consistently, that's a pretty impressive stat right there. And also, Taylor Smith, incredible weekend. Kendra Para. I mean, I just think Gentile Jackson's been down this year with numbers and injuries. And it's just really neat to see them string together a couple wins, and the trajectory for them and moving up the conference standings. They're right in the hunt.
I really like the way that she sort of operates. She's been on this show twice, and there's a whole bunch of different ways to do it, right? But her style, at least my impression from speaking with Gentile Jackson, is that she's first of all, she's just an incredibly positive person. I think that goes hand in hand with a lot of coaches, but she just comes across as such a happy, nice, cheerful person. And you can see that in her coaching style too. Like, there's not a lot of fire and brimstone. I was watching her when she was in Missoula, and it's very positive. Hey, you're going to make the next one. Keep shooting. It's all good. And I think that's a really interesting style to bring to the league. There's styles like that in the league, but hers is a little bit different. And I think so far, at least, it looks like it's paying dividends for Weber State.
Well, and their 7-10 record is not indicative of what they are doing now in conference play.
Sure.
You want to be playing your best basketball as you head into Boise. So when I look at them, they're on the upward, and that's neat to see. I mean, I think it was a real blow for them to have as many injuries as they've had to experience this year. Losing Santini for an ACL tear, who is going to be their point guard, has made it difficult for Gentile Jackson, and she's had to really call on, additional resources at the guard position. All in all, just a great weekend for Weber.
Around the Big Sky Women's Hoops, proudly presented by Advanced Imaging.
Around the Big Sky and Women's Hoops with Krista Redpath is brought to you this week by Advanced Imaging. And today we're happy to continue our conversation with Dr. Casey Schmitz, Advanced Imaging's medical director. Welcome, Dr. Schmitz. Please share with us why Advanced Imaging is so passionate about early cancer detection.
Of course. I'm sure you, like so many of us, have been personally impacted with cancer in your family. As you may know, cancer is the second leading cause of death in our country. However, many of those cancers, if we catch them early enough, we can treat them very successfully. And early detection in those cases can literally be the difference between life and death.
What are some of those cancers that can be treated successfully if caught early?
Sure. The ones that everybody knows about: breast cancer, colon cancer. One that people maybe don't know as much about is lung cancer. Those are cancers that if we catch them early and at an early stage, we can really impact survivability. And as I said, it can be the difference between life and death. So I would encourage everybody to go out and have your cancer screenings done.
What are the screenings that Advanced Imaging offers?
At Advanced Imaging, we're committed. We're offering Western Montanans the most advanced technology for early cancer detection. We offer 3D digital mammography for screening and specialized screenings as well for those that are at high risk of breast cancer. That includes both abbreviated and full breast MRI and what's called ABUS, which is a whole breast ultrasound for screening. We also offer CT virtual colonoscopy, which is similar to traditional colonoscopy. However, it's less invasive. It doesn't require anesthesia. It's not a real procedure like it is when you get a colonoscopy. The 5-year survival rate for that colorectal cancer, if we find it early, it's around 90%. So screening really impacts survivability. Our lung cancer CT screenings really impact survivability by finding people at an earlier stage, and we can often identify those patients at a much earlier stage where they're still curable. If you have any more interest, please go to our website. It's full of great information about the services we provide.
Thank you, Dr. Schmitz. We greatly appreciate Advanced Imaging's support of this show and your dedication to this community as the official cancer awareness partner of Grizzly Athletics. You can get your tickets now for the Lady Grizz Cancer Awareness Game on February 6th versus Northern Colorado to show your support for cancer awareness in our community.
We'll take a look at the Big Sky Conference women's basketball standings and the weekly awards from throughout the league as well. Next, Around the Big Sky Women's Hoops. Another Wednesday, it means another edition of Around the Big Sky and Women's Hoops. Krista Redpath, our Big Sky Conference basketball analyst, joining me, Colter Nuanez. It's probably presented by Advanced Imaging. Take a look at the standings in the Big Sky this week. New week, same team atop the standings. Montana State remains undefeated. They are 8-0 in conference play and 18-2 overall. This is the greatest start in the history of the Big Sky Conference. I shouldn't say the greatest, the best, the most prolific, highest win percentage through 20 games of any team in Big Sky Conference history. So it's certainly notable.
Wow.
Impressive,
Yeah,
right?
that is impressive.
Part of because it takes. There's been a lot of teams that have been 8-0 in league play. You had to stack the 10 wins in the non-conference. That's the part that makes this unique, is that they won so many games in the non-conference. We'll get to that in just a minute. Northern Arizona, though, continues to keep pace. They're 7-1. Their lone league loss is to Montana State. and the Lumberjacks are 16-5 overall. Idaho sits alone in third at 6-2 in league play, 14-5 overall. Weber sits at 4-3. They're alone in fourth. Then Sac State comes in at fifth at 3-4. Montana at sixth, 3-5. Idaho State is seventh at 2-5. Northern Colorado and Eastern Washington tied for eighth at 2-6. And Portland State is in 10th with a 1-6 record. But more on Montana State. I was looking up some of this stuff, Krista. There's all sorts of numbers that go into the formulas that determine NCAA tournament seeds, and we still have plenty of basketball to play. There's 10 conference games left, plus at least one, if not three, league tournament games for Montana State. But right now, the number one thing that's used for seeding in the NCAA tournament is the net ranking, and that's where they determine your strength of schedule, your wins against Quad 1, Quad 2, Quad 3, and Quad 4, and whatever league you come out of and all those different parameters. Montana State currently is 58th in the net. That's very impressive. To put this in perspective, Eastern Washington won 29 games last year. The highest they ever got in the net, I believe, was 68th or 69th. But at this time last year, they were more like in the 80s. So Montana State is significantly ahead of that. Montana State also is 1-1 versus Quad 1 teams, and they are they have 3 wins over Quad 2 teams, and they are 12-0 versus Quad 3 and 4 teams. So they have a very reputable schedule. Right now, though, the bracketology is still projecting them as a 14 seed. That's not going to hold, I don't believe, if they keep on winning. That, to me, is a projection based on the league, not the team.
Yeah, I think you got to beat a couple ranked teams, though. When I look back to, like, Northern Colorado,
right,
the year 2018 when they got the number 10 seed, they beat DePaul.
They beat
25th
DePaul.
in the nation.
They beat LSU.
They beat BYU.
Right.
So they got a couple key wins. I mean, I look at Montana State. This is very impressive when I look at their wins. Stringing together 11 wins, going down to Florida Gulf Coast and getting that win as you're heading into your tournament in Puerto Rico. They definitely have some great wins. I just don't know if it would be great to have a ranked team thrown in there. I do look at like NAU, now very impressive in November that they beat Arizona on their home floor, and then they went to Colorado State and won. So that's also pretty impressive, Coulter. When you look at non-conference games and what that could lead to. Montana State right now is 13th in the mid-major polls, obviously remaining unbeaten in 4 weeks of conference play. The Lumberjacks come in at number 18 in the College Insider mid-major poll. So that also could come into play when you look at NCAA tournament.
I think this came up because we were having a discussion on Twitter, actually, about if Montana State has an at-large resume right now with a 58 ranking. Net ranking. I don't think so because we don't have a complete season. I do think Montana State could have an at-large resume, but the only way that would happen by the end of the year is I think there's 2 scenarios. One, they run the table in the Big Sky Conference, go 18-0, and then win 2 straight at the Big Sky Tournament, but lose in the tournament championship game. So they're sitting there at 31-3. I still don't think that gets them in, though, because
we're a one-bid league.
I think that's right. And so then the other scenario would be that they lose 1 conference game, but then run through the conference tournament to get to 31-2. But in that scenario, 31-3, excuse me. But in that scenario, they wouldn't need the at-large bid, so we wouldn't know because they would win the automatic bid by winning the conference tournament title.
Well, it's tough because you look back at these neutral site tournaments. We've been doing this for a while now, so I've called all of them. What are we on?
I think this will be the 10th one. 10th, is that right?
Yeah, because I called 11. I called the first one here.
This is the 10th one. Yeah, you're right. Because the very 10th. First year we just celebrated our 10th anniversary of Skyline last year. The very first year of Skyline was the very first year that you did the Big Sky Tournament here in Missoula.
Yeah, so 2015, 2016 was first neutral site. That was a really tough year because that was also a team that Montana State was fantastic. They ended up getting shocked by number 9 seed Idaho State.
Totally.
So I still, this is up for debate. We are a one-bid league. You want to send your best team.
Sure.
And so there's parts of that where the tournament, you have to really play good basketball in Boise to make it and to win the championship.
The other thing that I think, and again, I'm not saying or projecting that there's going to be an at-large team out of the Big Sky Conference. I don't know if that's ever going to happen again. The last time it did happen was when you were playing back in 1997 when there was 2 teams, right?
No, it was back when Boise State and Montana, so it was before me.
Right before you played.
We were a number 9 seed, but nobody else got in.
Right, totally. 1997, you're right. It was right before you started your career at the University of Montana.
It was actually Coach Binford, or Bader, Tricia Bader.
Yeah, Tricia Bader. And Montana, right?
Yes,
those two were the two that got in.
With the, Ann Lake, the Bavarian sisters, or cousins.
So here's the other thing that would help, and I'm not saying this is going to get them there, but it would help. If Northern Arizona ran the table the whole rest of the way, including beating the Cats in Bozeman. But that was the Cats' only loss until then. And then you have 2 high 20s teams playing the conference championship. Then, I don't know, I just think that it would make the NAU win look better for Montana State in Flagstaff.
I love your energy, Coulter, about this. I mean, I would love for our league to be more than a one-bid league.
Regardless, I just want it to be, here's the thing. Both sides of the coin, men's and women's basketball, if you're getting worse than a 13 seed, you're getting an absolute, you're just getting an unwinnable game. You're getting a death sentence. It's really unfortunate. A 13 seed, though, I'm not saying you have a chance, but you have way more of a chance than a 14, 15, or 16 seed. Yeah. A 12, though, is big time. Or an 11. Like that Northern Colorado team that got the 10, I thought they got so jobbed, though, because usually a 7-10 is 2 mid-majors. They got a 10, and they had to play Michigan.
But they didn't lose by that much.
No, they didn't.
61-75.
But Michigan is such a high major team, though. That Michigan team was the 6th best team out of the Big Ten that year or whatever.
Yeah, they were 7th in the nation.
But they still are, Michigan. If you get to go play, just throw it out there, Colorado State or Utah State or any other mid-major, that's so much better of an advantage. We've seen the same thing on the men's side. The last time the Big Sky champ got a 12 seed, what happened? Montana won because they played Nevada. Nevada's different than playing Kansas or, like last year, the 16 versus 16 seed was going to have to go play. I can't even remember what number 1 seed, but that just literally never going to happen.
This will be interesting because if Logie gets his Cats there again.
Oh, man.
And this is the 4th year that Montana State can string together 4 Big Sky Conference championship wins, 4 NCAA tournament appearances. You'd think that maybe the committee would start going, okay, something's going on in Bozeman?
For sure. The problem for these Cats is that they're so far behind the 8 ball right now.
Yeah, they are.
They already have 5 conference losses. They don't have a point guard. That's the other part that unfortunately, it just squelches the enthusiasm around all of it because it just continues to build upon itself. I think there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm about the women's side of the league right now because I think that there's legitimately at least 3 good teams, and I think the Lady Grizz and maybe even Weber State and even Sac State can all be up there as good teams too. On the men's side, there's several good teams, Montana included. But what are we marching towards? Is this another, go play Kansas or go play North Carolina or go play Tennessee or whatever? It's just sort of tough, the scenario. But I do think that the Cats, rather than the at-large bid for Montana State's women, I do think that they have an outside chance to get a better seed than what we've seen Big Sky Conference champions get recently. I do think 12 or 13 could be realistic for this team.
Very much. I mean, Coach Binford's had her team there. I mean, the last few years, they have been in the conversation every single year.
Well, the Big Sky Women's Hoops with Krista Redpath is proudly presented by Advanced Imaging. Krista, I know you have both professional and personal experience with Advanced Imaging.
Yes. As the official cancer awareness partner of Grizzly Athletics, Advanced Imaging is on your team. From 3D digital mammography to virtual colonoscopy and CT lung cancer screening, Advanced Imaging is dedicated to providing Western Montanans with the most advanced technology for early cancer detection. They are your champion, delivering life-saving information when it matters most, because catching cancer early can make all the difference in achieving successful treatment. Support life-saving cancer awareness by attending the Lady Grizz Cancer Awareness Game February 6th versus Northern Colorado. Advanced Imaging, quality for life.
When it comes to the weekly award, Sophie Glancy, she's stamping this thing. She's been the Big Sky Conference Player of the Week a couple times already. Four times this.
Fourth time.
Amazing. She helped Northern Arizona to a 2-0 weekend this last weekend. Scored 17 points against Eastern Washington, and then turned around and scored 28 against Idaho. A model of efficiency. She's got 8 20-point games so far. She's in the top 10 in the country in double-doubles right now. She's getting it done across the board. scoring, rebounding, blocking shots. She's even shooting the three pretty well. She's a post, and she shot 60% from beyond the arc this last weekend as well. So Sophie Glancy, the preseason Big Sky Player of the Year, she's living up to the hype.
Right, and she's leading the league for field goal percentage. So for all the shots she's taking, she's shooting the best in the Big Sky. So that's also impressive. I do want to say this, though, Player of the Week. Let's share the love a little, if anyone's listening, for the Big Sky Conference out there. Taylor Feldman's had it 3 times. Sophie Glancy's had it 4. I mean, I think Nopu could have been considered for Weber State. There's a couple other kids. Courtney Grossman's played great.
Totally.
Cherik, I mean, look at her play.
Totally.
This last week. So, I mean, NAU's right there, but they've definitely owned the awards.
There's a little bit of, I don't know if flaw is the right word. Montana State's the number 1 team right now. Because they're the number 1 team because they have so much depth and balance. They're just not going to have a person winning this award,
well,
really.
And that's why it's like there's so much more that goes into it. Esmeralda Morales did get it 3 weeks ago.
Yes, right.
I mean, she had 45 points.
Well, she had to drop 30 against Northern Arizona to get it.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, they are so spread,
yes,
this team. And so there isn't just, and that's one thing that Coach Binford, in all of our conversation, I spend a lot of time visiting with these head coaches heading into this rivalry weekend. That was one thing that she really talked about is we've been able to rely on multiple weapons at different times. So that's indicative of, the Player of the Week.
You mentioned this, but this was also in the weekly release from the league. Montana State number 13 again in the mid-major poll. They're on an 11-game winning streak, 8-0 in conference play, and the Lumberjacks are sitting at 18. So you got 2 teams in the top 25 of the College Insider mid-major poll. Around the Big Sky Women's Hoops, take a look at what's coming up in the league this upcoming weekend. Around the Big Sky Women's Hoops, Krista Redpath in studio with me. Colter Nuanez is probably presented this week by Advanced Imaging. This week's upcoming games includes the completion of the first half of Big Sky Conference play. So before we rattle this off, this point in the season, what sort of evaluation and value does this have? Because you get to see teams for the first time for the last time this weekend, and then all of a sudden you're into the next part of the schedule where it's everybody seeing each other again.
Well, you're looking at trends, right? You're looking at who's winning, who's being able to string together 1 or 2 games. I've said it all season so far, there's a lot of parity in the league because there's been a lot of really close games. I don't think you can put a ton of stock in it yet, Colter, until teams make the turn. I will say this, the Lady Grizz play their last 6 of the 10 on the road.
Yes.
So there is some really tough, it seems to be some stretches where teams are really on the road a lot. So they're going to be tested. I mean, they're 1-8 away from Dahlberg Arena.
Right.
So that is going to come into play, the travel. So I look at more, I make my little chart. You know how I am. I write down every game of every week, and I take a look at who has to go where. And it'll just be interesting to see how this second half of conference play really plays out. I mean, injuries come into play.
Totally.
There's lots of different factors that come down the stretch in February.
Well, and as we always say, too, and I know this is a factor that's hard for the fans to understand, but basketball seasons are very long, and who wants to continue playing with each other? Like, that's where that starts to get revealed. If you are really loving it and you're really loving the pursuit of whatever you are in the mix for, whether that's just seeding or a conference championship or just pride, whatever, do you want to continue to play together? Because oftentimes we see teams that just want to pack it up. You can tell. You can't really tell that they're over it until like mid-February, but then you can definitely tell. Also, though, conversely, you can always tell the teams that are still having a fun time playing together and that are coming together and are getting better no matter what their pursuit is. So that's another thing to watch. Here's what the league schedule looks like this week. Idaho State's at Eastern Washington. This is Thursday. Weber State at Idaho. Montana State at Sac State. And Montana at Portland State. And then Saturday, the standalone game is Northern Colorado at Northern Arizona. And then you got Montana State in Portland. Idaho State at Idaho, Montana at Sac State, Weber State at Eastern, and then a yo-yo weekend again. Idaho State's at Northern Colorado Monday, and Weber State is at NAU. No matchup that really stands out to me, so let's talk about the Montana schools. For me, I think the biggest weekend on the schedule is for the Lady Grizz because the Lady Grizz were on a 3-game losing streak until they appointed an interim head coach. Then they won back-to-back home games and looked like they'd turned the corner. Then they lose at Idaho, but Idaho, I think, is, by performance so far this year, better than Montana. And then they lose a 1-point game to the rival. Moral victories, I don't know if I want to go there, but you do have to carry the momentum of playing with confidence and moxie on Saturday into this weekend, especially because you're playing two teams that you're absolutely supposed to beat. Like, you're absolutely ahead of the standings against Portland State and Sac State, so you have to take advantage of that. I think that a weekend sweep could be huge for the Lady Grizz momentum. I think a weekend split would be fine, and I think getting swept this weekend for the Lady Grizz could be incredibly detrimental to the hopes of their season.
Well, for sure. I mean, you look at how many losses they have right now. They've got 5 conference losses, so you just really can't afford to get swept at this point. And, you know, you look at Montana State, 8-0. It's going to be really hard to catch them, Coulter. I mean, even if they do have a slip up and they lose a game, you know, every streak is meant to come to an end at some point. But they're going to be really hard to catch. So they're playing a different style of basketball. They're playing, you know, they can play a little bit more loose. There's more urgency for these teams that are in the middle of the standings because you are playing for that first round bye. You have to be one of the top 6. And it is interesting how the tournament is set up because we really don't see 4, 5, 3, and 6 all the way until Monday. The tournament starts on Saturday. So there is, you know, a lot of basketball that's played before you see some of your top teams. But again, you are playing for those extra days of rest and having one less game.
I also have my eyes on the Montana State-Sac State game Thursday because Sac State was all the way at the bottom last year. They were 1-19 at one point in the year. But then they came out and they shocked Northern Arizona, which is one of NAU's only conference losses last year, and that helped them turn a corner. And then all of a sudden in February, they won 4 or 5 games, and that helped them sort of take some momentum into Boise. This Montana State team is better than last year's NAU team, but it's a similar scenario. So if you're the Bobcats, you can't go lay an egg coming off a rivalry win on Saturday, and you got to take Sac State seriously. I know they haven't had a lot of success so far early this year, but they're going to come with it, and Aaron Kohlhoff has proven that he can beat some of the top teams in the league, especially when they're at home.
Well, and they, you know, Sacramento State got killed on the boards by Weber State, which was really shocking when I look at their starting lineup. Now, Coach Kohlhoff likes to play his 5 starters, and he really doesn't go much down the line past that. But you look at, you know, Bentavere Stig's 5'8" or so, but J.D. Martin, Katie Penawenta, Fatu Jaite, Lena Falk, they're all over 6 feet.
Right.
So, I mean, they should be doing better.
Well, Jaite's a great rebounder, so that should help you. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's been some issues with this Sac State team. You know, we've talked about this. They're individually good players, but how do they collectively come together this year and play? And they've had some ups and downs. Now, they've put together some really good quarters. They just haven't been able to string them together for consecutive games. But yeah, you absolutely nail that point with it doesn't really matter if you make a run at Boise.
And that's where you got to start building momentum right now, or at least into the second half of this conference schedule. Sac State, by the way, they did win 2 in a row, Northern Colorado and then at Idaho State, but then they lost at Weber pretty handily on Saturday. You mentioned them. They got beat up on the boards.
Yes.
But certainly that was a little bit of a perplexing one because I think, you know, coming into the league, we thought that Sac State was probably going to be a lot better than Weber State, but that's not true at this exact moment. Weber has the head-to-head, and Weber's ahead of Sac in the standings. So
they just didn't shoot well. They didn't defend well. I mean, Kendra Parra had 30 points. So just definitely some gaps in their play that I think Coach Kohlhoff really needs to try to resolve here in the second half of conference play.
Also interested to see how Idaho bounces back. They had a 6-game winning streak that then came to an abrupt end with that 30-point loss at Northern Arizona. They got Weber at Idaho State. That's another thing. I think that we thought they were going to be better than those two teams, but are they? It's a huge weekend for Idaho.
And they haven't seen Weber or Idaho State yet, but they get a Weber State team that's kind of surging right now.
Yes, totally.
So I think that was my game to really watch this week would be Idaho, Weber State. I think that's going to be a good one. And again, you're seeing the team see the last of who they haven't seen yet before they make the turn. So I think there'll be a lot of questions answered.
Is there anything else you're looking at in the league this upcoming weekend?
You know, I just love looking at all of it, Coulter.
Totally.
I mean, it is so fun and fascinating. If anything, I just think it's great to recognize all of these hardworking athletes, and we seem to do that each week, and it's been fun to watch different players step up at different times. I'm still so impressed by Courtney Grossman over at Eastern. I mean, she's leading the league in rebounding, and she's a freshman, and I would love her play. So kudos to her because she's having a heck of a year.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch her blossom and develop. I can't remember who, but one of the fellow media people was asking me about her this last weekend when I think it was like between games. Oh, it was Austin Parr from SWX. And he's like, did you see that coming from Grossman? And I said, you know what? She reminds me of, and I said this on the show before, but I'll repeat the point. She reminds me of that, like the football guys that are three-sport athletes coming out of Montana. They're a little bit raw, and then they go and they just play football, and you see them just blossom because they're specifically training for it and lifting weights for it and all that. That's Grossman. She was a three-sport athlete at Billings West. Her mom's a volleyball coach. She was a great track athlete. Well, then she gets into a D1 program with Jody Gleason, and now she's just concentrating on basketball. Look at her. I mean, she was kind of a perimeter-oriented three-point shooter at Billings West. She can still shoot it. But now, I mean, she's, like you said, she's the leading rebounder in the conference.
Well, actually, she's not. That's a mistake. She's the leading defensive rebounder in the league. But Jennifer Adlin is leading the league right now, 10.5 rebounds a game. And then Sophie Glancy's number 2, and Emma Nopu is right there from Weber State, who I've been talking about the whole show.
Yeah, but Grossman's certainly up there.
She's right there.
One of the best rebounders in the conference, certainly. So should be fun. Next week, we'll be at the midway point, so maybe we'll do a couple, mid-season type of picks. Who's been the best in the conference? Who's sort of leading the way thus far? And we'll certainly have thoughts on what's coming down the stretch run for the second half of Big Sky Conference play. Around the Big Sky Women's Hoops, proudly presented by Advanced Imaging of Missoula. Krista, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Coulter.